Good morning. Did you enjoy yesterday night? Definitely. We noticed that there were actually 3 or 4 generations in the room, including really small kids running around, so very inspirational in that environment. So let us pick up on this positive energy and open this panel of the results of the discussion at the level of the continents, which happened on the 13th of May, during the first day of the conference. And we have the panel of people who had very important role of facilitating those discussions. So they are here in 5 minutes to share the results of this discussion. Well, they would be very short, but please rest assured that the more specific details of the meeting and discussion would be shared with us. We will combine it and share with all of you so you could bring it to your respective RCEs. Without further ado, may I invite Ali Bukhar. Sorry? Sorry, excuse me. Oh, forgive me. So I'm reminded about the protocol here. So the overall goal of the continental discussion was to agree about the joint actions and propose some immediate concrete steps at the level of the continents. So in Asia Pacific, in Europe, in Americas, and in Africa. So that is the overall goal. So what came out of that would be shared now. Now, the suggested questions for the discussion were: what are the opportunities to have for each of the continents? What are the basic concerns? And as I mentioned, come with the actions. So here you have the list of the speakers. And Ali, may I just invite you to take the floor, please?
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ali Bukhar Ahmed from RCE Nigeria, and I chaired the. Actually, we had 2 sessions. Mr. Jim started the chairing the African session. Later, the forum asked me to, and later we hosted the. European RCE. So we had 2 sessions, the African RCEs and the combined session of Africa and European RCEs. We talked about innovations, traditional and ecological knowledge, in which some of what we discussed and what was exhibited there, it was shown by Mr. Jim yesterday about the wonderful works they've been doing in sustainable development yesterday. I presented a program we are doing in Kano too, and ESDA teacher training collaboration with governments. We have a very brilliant discussion about that, and most governments honestly are willing to help. And applied action research, it's part of traditional innovation, community of practice, support of SADC. It's a wonder. I think it has never been done before. This is the first time we hear something like that in Africa. Well, there could be collaborations among RCEs somewhere else. But I tell you what the SADC region is doing, it's very wonderful. I think you should all collaborate with them and learn from them. RCE Cairo University Innovation Chairs. Alternative sanitation too was discussed yesterday. They are how to curtail and reduce the use of water or Western water every day. RCE Greater Nairobi developing a new master's program, site learning, and we discuss about, honestly, the easiest way to communicate to people or for people you're working with, the community you're working for, to understand what you are doing is to have your website, and everybody can just log in anytime, see what you are doing, see if you can help. Maybe if you can convince him, you can be able to join you or finance a program. Lack of funding we discuss extensively. Africa is bedeviled with poverty, certainly, but we have diverse ideas. Some are for fundraising while others are not. We actually raised more issues than solutions, more questions than answers in this regard, and I think the detail will be available to every one of you. Issues of misperception and consumption by people, we discussed that because I think it's a level of poverty, a level of understanding of the global affairs. There is also crisis of identity, and my RCE is part of them. Well, the loss of the land, particularly Nigeria and Cairo, we have problem with registration. How do we legalize our affairs? How do we become a legal organization? The governments find it difficult to place us in. Maybe are we NGOs? Are we government agencies? Are we volunteer organizations and the rest? RCE is such a diverse organization, is a melting pot of all these organizations. And some governments said, oh, we can't register you because we don't know where to register you, simply because the law of the land did not, would not allow them to do that. And RCE Cairo Foco, okay. That one was discussed. I think I was accused that some bilateral organization was better. RCE was created a new legal entity investigating that. Okay, we've also discussed. This is very interesting because we have, I think we received about 5 or 6 interested candidates there, even students from Canada, of African origin. They joined us. They were inquiring, asking more about the activities of RCEs, and it was very brilliant. They were very happy with what they had, and they contributed a lot to Capital and Existing meeting in Africa is an annual meeting. We did not meet, honestly, we did not conclude that because some RCEs are saying no, especially the SADC RCEs. They feel what they are doing is enough. But some of us feel that we still must have a RCE community in Africa, continental community in Africa, and we did not conclude that too, but I'm sure we'll be persistent to convince Mr. Jim and the rest. They have to support us, because the more you have collaboration, the more your network, the wider your network, the stronger you become. This is what we believe. Participating RCEs, these are the participating RCEs. Oh,
that's our Americas.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Feel free to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah. Honestly, I cannot remember. There are so many attended, and I think I cannot remember all. The SADC are prominent. Cairo, Kano, from Kenya, from Malawi, from everywhere. Thank you very much.
Good job, Art. Now we'll go for beer.
Thank you very much. I guess what I just want to say initially, innovation is always occurring, and one of the things that we found very helpful with our continental meeting was, on the one hand, having a co-chairing process. We did a lot of work at the meeting, and having it broken down really helped by having co-chairs. Another thing that I think is really important, just to note for the record, how important it was to have had those continental meetings as part of the World Environmental Education Congress, to the extent that we had a number of prospective we had a number of visitors and people interested in forming RCEs. So you'll see I put potential RCEs up there because we had people from Jamaica and Trinidad, Venezuela, and Virginia at our meetings, and perhaps this is a way of expanding the RCE network in the future. I also want to recognize, too, that we had a representation from Environment Canada, who's been a very strong supporter for the RCEs in Canada, and that was an important contribution at the meeting. I'll just highlight some of the key questions that we were looking at, and then Lyle will talk about some of the next steps. One of the things we recognized was the need to be able to look at our RCEs at various scales and be able to understand what are the key areas of focus. And so one of the suggestions or ideas was the need for some type of electronic mapping to view, for instance, the continents and then view globally what the key issue areas and activities were of each RCE. A second thing was the concern for promoting mutual learning and collaboration, and recognizing how can we do that when we have RCEs at different stages of development within the Americas. A third concern was the need to create linkages between RCEs in the Americas, and here the continental scale is really important, to the extent that if we have to, if we are to advance sort of know-how, sharing of tacit knowledge, we really can form some very valuable exchanges between RCEs within the Americas, and those are sort of natural partners in terms of the movement of peoples between RCEs. One of the things that's quite distinctive, well, I guess all the continents would have this, but thinking about how we can address the language differences and encourage the resource sharing across the different language groups and communities within North America. And finally, a concern was expressed, how can we raise awareness of the RCEs within the Americas, particularly within some portions of the Americas that currently don't have many RCEs, promote that concept amongst governments, for example, in South America, in the United States, and in other parts where greater awareness is needed. So I'll turn it now over to Lyle.
Thank you, Roger. I'm the infectious one, as I heard yesterday. Just to clarify for those of you that don't know me, infectious in humor, not in physical attributes. This is the efficient and organized one. Enough about that. One of the things I think that was interesting yesterday, or the other day, being part of the continental meetings, was that it's one thing to come up with challenges and questions. The next thing is, what do you do about it? And I was very, very pleased, not only with the quantity of help that we had that day, but also the quality. And if you look at the slide, you'll see that one of the things that did happen as the next steps that was very significant was that there were 3 groups that actually were formed as part of our meetings with some very specific purposes. The first group was to look at the advance of a collaborative, and that's a very important word, a collaborative RCE training program and exchanges, with Western Jalisco taking the lead on that. And we're looking at the role of mentoring. We've been talking about that, and we would like in our Americas to take a look at what does that mean and how do we help each other. We've had some past experiences working with Carativa and having our Americas conference in Saskatchewan, but we'd like to develop that. The second one was the group that came together to look at advancing biodiversity, which we all know is a key theme for next year, and the possible contributions that Americas might make because of that biodiversity, and how it's related to even the topic of climate change, which we heard yesterday also is significant. So it was interesting to see that recognition of those themes. And the last one, which I'm most excited about, group number 3, 6 people came forward to actually volunteer to form what's called the RCE of America's Coordinating Group. And they've actually taken on the task to make sure that some of us that are all talk and no action actually get the actions done. So again, thank you to those people. The RCEs also looked at, of the Americas, to look at the issue of potential funding and in-kind resources. In particular, we heard translation is an important part of the Americas, looking at curriculum and ESD materials. What kind of partners do we have? Jose has already got me on a plane to Brussels to get the the EU to help. Is that right? No, he's shaking his head. And also to support continental meetings of Americas. And we'll hear some exciting news about that in the next slide. And I think the last one on next steps and strategies is the question related to reporting and evaluation. We are very fortunate because we do have that word expertise within our continental boundaries, plus all of the resources that we have through the research that we've been hearing about. So we're looking at that as our next step towards the continental meeting for next year. And speaking about that, right at the top, Zeola. Would you stand, please? Zeola made an offer from Curitiba, Brazil, to host the next continental meeting of the Americas, May 2009. So we are very pleased with that, and thank you very much. It was an exciting moment for us, just as I'm sure it was exciting for Montreal and Saskatchewan to host this meeting. At the closing, we looked at our partnerships and, of course, the work that we do with UNU and IAS altogether is very important. The need for a creation of an electronic map that looks at the key information about the RCEs, something I know that is being looked at. We heard about it from the UNU. We're excited about that, and we want to support their efforts with that, with themes and challenges and maybe some models that are already existing. Also, the RCEs looked at identifying the strengths for mentoring with other RCEs. As we said, training is important. As we have our candidates, and we had many of them there, we don't want to scare them off. We want to bring them in so that we can build our capacity and learn from them. And I think that's one of the things we're learning from our candidates is that they have so much to offer. We want to encourage them. We want to help them so that they can come along maybe even easier than what it was for us. So there were contacts that were identified and willing to provide that background. And I think we already heard that translation is not an issue. I think it's an area we have to look at, even with the application forms to other languages, the logos. And I was very encouraged by hearing the UNU people talk about the discussions they've had, how they're looking at addressing this, and also the potential solutions that are already in the process. So again, it is very encouraging to see when we come to these meetings that things have been already heard from the previous meetings and they're being addressed, and we're part of that next step. So with that, I would like to thank especially all of our colleagues from Montreal RCE for hosting this, the beautiful facilities, putting this all together, our UNU people, our people from the Americas that were at our continental meeting, and especially all of you that are delegates that have been so kind in sharing your information with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Zineda, and thank you for having the possibility to be here. Hello and good morning from Europe. I have now the chance to present shortly our experiences and outcomes from our continental meeting in Europe. So we were 12 RCEs at the European meeting, and also we are 17 RCEs in Europe, acknowledged RCEs. We were only 5 of those that were already acknowledged. But what was very good, we were 7 candidate RCEs, and you can see the list on the screen here. And so it's really a challenge, I think, to we thought about why there are not more existing acknowledged RCEs at the meeting, and one reason might be the lack of funding, which is one challenge actually. Another reason might be also that there was the Bonn meeting just in April, but we'll try to speed up with that. Yes, does it work like this? Yeah. So we had several challenges in management and then in action. This slide shows you the challenges we defined for the management issue. And the management challenges are to build really a kind of European network building, so to combine the RCEs and bring us together, exchange better our experiences on a European level. Involve more RCEs from also Eastern Europe. There are still initiatives going on in Russia. There are some interests in Albania, in southeastern countries. Then to develop and test evaluation and assessment of RCEs. You already have heard maybe about the model we have developed there, for example. The need for a global communication and representation platform. So this is not only on a European level, but also here to raise the challenge of really to build up a global communication web platform that represents all our activities and makes us to exchange our experiences from all over the world. And then we thought about our actions, what we can do to face those challenges. And there will be one European RCE meeting in December from 16 to 18, which will be hosted at RCE Graz, where we come together again and build working groups where we have more time to discuss all our challenges, and we prepare in advance some topics for that, which come on later. Then there is a coordination group from RCE Barcelona, Rennes, candidate RCE Wächter and RCE Graz Styria, but as there haven't been so many acknowledged RCEs here, I think this still has to be discussed also in the broader European framework. So who will be member of this coordination group then to really strengthen the network of European RCEs. Then to organize fundraising strategy. In RCE Munich, Jos has already mentioned that yesterday, there's really an expert in European funding. And so to build a common strategy, a common idea, what we like to achieve with our European funding activities, and then not to go one deadline after deadline, but really to develop together a strategy and then look for what fundings are available, not what are the calls and then see what can we do for the calls, but the other way around. And finally, contribute to a global communication and representation platform, also by our contributions on a global level. Then in ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, what do we do, like actions really, hands work. Bridge the gap between society and education is one of the challenges we defined. So not only to have projects with schools or within the RCE partners, but really to communicate to society, to cooperate with society and go into a broader field of people. Rethink our economic paradigm and get involved into political discussions. And so to do some policy making to include ESD into European policy and also national policies, and exchange and maximize learning between Europe and Africa. And the second half of our meeting, or the last half hour, we then came to the African continental meeting, and then we discussed also what we can do here together. So our actions, develop youth and children development-oriented actions. We'll have this as one working group at the European meeting then, and develop some proposals for it. Intergenerational learning, so here also to face the challenge of really coming closer to society and involve different generations of society in our ESD programs. Education and Sustainability magazine, which is organized by Heloise in RCE Barcelona. Then get involved into national ESD policy. One example was that in Austria at the national ESD strategy, the RCE really plays a crucial role in this policy, and that might be just one way to involve in those national strategies for RCEs, for ESD, to involve and include RCEs here as a method, a tool, a framework to involve ESD in society. Then reactivate Copernicus Alliance, another tool or idea to get involved into European policy making. Copernicus is a European network of higher education institutions focusing on sustainability, which fell asleep somehow during the past 5 years around. And we like to get more involved into this again, and it's just re-established and try to build a network here. And then what I especially like to mention is a conference co-organized by RCE Skane, which will take place in Lund this autumn in September. It will be from September 28 to 29. and is organized in the framework of the EU presidency of the nation of Sweden. And this might be also a chance then to meet between European RCs and to have really a policy impact on a European level. And you have the link here, and Kerstin is also distributing some flyers and information down in the lobby. And finally, students and staff exchange. When we came to the African continental meeting, we thought about student and staff exchange programs we could enhance, or thought about more actions to really communicate and exchange our activities here. So that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Clemens. Interesting trend is being observed. It seems like our European RC, as individual RCs as well as community, are really having very strong intention to work with policy processes at the European level in a very coherent way. Another interesting observation, active members of the various coordinating group become now not only full-fledged RCs, but actually RC candidates. Congratulations and thank you, Detlev. Now, could I ask our last speaker, Won, to present the activities or discussions of the Asian group. And I must compliment Won and Zainal for incredible efforts, because this is one of the largest groups among the RCs. There are 26 RCs out of 62 actually exist in Asia Pacific, and you should, listening to one, appreciate the level of efforts to find some interesting and mutually acceptable points for collaboration among those RCs. Thank you.
Thank you, Zinaida. Good morning, everybody. My name is Won Jung-byun. I come from RC Tongyang in Korea. And I'm very happy to be able to present to you the results of the Asia-Pacific Continental Meeting on behalf of my dear colleague, Dr. Zainal Sanusi, my co-facilitator, and all of the Asia-Pacific RC community. As you can see on the board, we had quite extensive discussion through the short 2 hours meeting, and we had 15 RCs from all over the Asia-Pacific coming to this meeting. And through this 2-hour session, we were trying to deal with 3 questions. First one is to deal with the issue of thematic grouping based on recent activities of each RC, and try to come up with very concrete and specific timelines and plans to continue with these thematic groups, which I'm sure will be continuing throughout this day. And secondly, the establishment of Asia-Pacific Coordination Committee was one of the key issues that we had to deal with. And I'm very pleased to inform you that SIX and also another member from Japan has kindly volunteered to participate in this coordination committee. So if I may, I would like to ask you to, all of the Asian Pacific Coordination Committee members, would you like to stand up for a moment, please? Kiran and Sana? Yeah? Okay, give a big applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. And third issue on the table was the organization of the Second Continental Meeting. And coming from the Tongyang meeting of the last year, we were thinking that we should have a meeting sometime this fall or winter, but we're still discussing on the details, and we'll let you know about the details after it's decided. And if I may just briefly go over the thematic areas we discussed, the issues that we came up with that we were interested were like this. There were about 7 issues that we wanted to deal with. First of all, for youth section, there was an initiative by Tongyang RC to collect photographs of young people who are involved in various youth activities around different RCs. In that way, this is a very small initiative, but I'm sure from these photographs of young people, we'll get a much more inspiration out of them. And a learning event combined with perhaps the event coming up on climate change, youth meeting in India, which is coming up next February, will be a platform to collaborate all the various youth programs together and make an opportunity for these young people to meet together. Secondly, on biodiversity, there was a a very good suggestion from RC Kotaku that they'll be collecting a poster of common challenges in terms of biodiversity and coming up and be translated into local languages and spread out to the Asian Pacific community. And this, I'm sure, will come up to be a beautiful piece of work. And linking the activities of ESD, we are now moving towards COP10, which is coming up next year. And RCE Chubu has been taking the lead role in bringing about the various initiatives taken by the individual RCEs and bring them together next October in Japan. Thirdly, community-based projects, there are a lot of exchange programs going on already. So we thought that this kind of exchange programs can be aligned together and perhaps development of websites to support this kind of community-based projects. This was taken by RC Kobe to be decided before the next meeting. And fourthly, the school agenda was one of the most popular issues, and there are lots of activities going on in terms of schools. And one initiative, one of the big initiatives, is to make a thematic bulletin of the school ESD programs that we do. So this, I'm sure, will be helped by the UNUIS staffs, and hopefully this will be way to convene and discuss things off this kind of face-to-face meetings. And also thematic web pages was one of the ideas, and sharing and donation of books on environment to different RCEs so that we can have a library in each RCE is one of the good suggestions. And through these thematic works, we have come up with a very specific timeline. So although it's not elaborated here, everybody knows who's doing what until when. So for this year, we are hoping that before the next International RC Convention, we'll have something concrete come up as an outcome. And after those thematic works, we had a small discussion on the work that we can do together in collaboration. And my colleague from India has kindly suggested this beautiful term called Sejatra, which means, I'm sure, I hope I pronounced it well. It means well-being and we wanted to convey the idea of sustainability in Asian Pacific way. And through this Sejatra project, we thought we'll come up with some joint umbrella project among Asian Pacific RCEs. And one of the possibilities can be the RCE Center coming up in Tongyang, which would be an opportunity to share and strengthen each RCE's activities. And also there was a raise of concern over the promotion of the diversity in Asia-Pacific groups. As you can see, Asia-Pacific is the largest area in the world, and you can imagine how diverse the issues and thoughts and activities would be. So touching on the issues of poverty, urban challenges, especially slum area issues, etc., would be very important in these terms, and we would like to continue our projects on this aspect. And this comes to the end of my presentation, and I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of all of the Asian Pacific RCE community to thank RCE Montreal and wonderful job of UNUIS to holding this wonderful opportunity to convene. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vaughan. And probably what you also noticed have happened during the thematic consultations, continental consultations. Not only the continental discussions took place, but also our African RCs took time to meet European RCs and vice versa. So we spent 1 hour on our own and 1 hour together. So quite a lot of thought went into exchange of the ideas for potential collaborations, and quite a few interesting project ideas would be pursued. Now, with this, I would like to thank all of you who put thoughts and efforts into this process. We really look forward to the continuous work after this meeting among the RCs at the continental levels and beyond. I also would like to thank all of you, and you should appreciate the amount of analytical work which went into consolidating all of this richness of discussion into several slides. So enormous work and very much we appreciate it. More than that, people who are sitting in front of you would be giving us more detailed account of what have happened during the meeting. So I would like to give them a big hand and thank you for all of your efforts. If I could ask you to remain here just for 5 minutes and make a little bit of an introduction into the next session. The next section, which is discussion on the themes, has overall goal to find out the joint possible actions immediately, as well as which we can pursue immediately after the conference jointly among several RCEs in each of the areas, as well as to find out the mechanisms of the ways of keeping the discussion around the themes going. Can I have the slide, please? Yoko, may I please have a slide? Just to explain a little bit of a composition of the next one. Yeah, we can stay here for the time being. So in your groups, which for this morning would be 4, and you will see the composition of the groups in just a second, you would be asked by your facilitators to consider several questions. The general spirit of the question is in front of you. So what are the opportunities for ESD actions in this particular area, which you are going to focus on? What common actions RCEs could undertake? And you can consider several actions, and not all RCEs should be part of those actions, 2, 3, 5, or 10. However the discussion goes would be perfectly fine. So what are immediate steps which should be taken? What is the timeline, and who takes responsibility? We can come up with wonderful ideas, but unless you take charge of those ideas, we will not move anywhere. And we know it on the experience from the last year. Only those great ideas which emerged, who had a host, so to speak, who had an ownership of you, went forward. And it was mainly in 2 areas, sustainable consumption and production, and health. So the rest of the areas among the RCEs seems like we're not flourishing as intensely as we all hoped. Now, and the third most important question is related to the fact that very often the discussion is not going on with the same enthusiasm and a bit between the conferences. The question is it necessary? And if yes, would you come up with some idea which would help us to facilitate this discussion in between the continental meetings? Would they, or global meetings, would they be every year or every second year from now on? So those are the 3 discussions. Essentially, what the opportunities, it leads to the question of the projects, timeline, responsibility, steps, and finally, how to have the thematic discussion network going, and if it is necessary. Yoko, may I just get to the list of the project, of the discussion themes? Well, you have 4 sets of the discussions. This one is this morning between not 9:15, 9:30 probably, and 12. You would have a break in between. So it is up to your group and your facilitators to tease out the opinion from you whether you want to take this break. Or you continue working throughout, depends on the dynamic. But if you feel that you need a break, please take this opportunity and have a look at the posters of the RCEs if you haven't done so. They're wonderful, really, and it's a huge wealth of inspirational material in there. Now, at the same time, there would be a cleaning for RCE candidates, which would be facilitated by Mario Tabukanon. Mario, may I just ask you to stand up and just turn around so Mario would be with you? It will start at 9:15 and continue until 12, and our candidates would have a chance to consult
Mario, about any questions about the process, implications, fates and lives of the RCs after acknowledgement and so on and so forth. Mario has an enormous experience of working with RCs for the last 4 or 5 years, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region, but also beyond. Now, what will happen, or what will not happen, is you putting forward descriptions or descriptions and examples of your RCs to, working in a particular area to start with. So all of you send one-page description for some of the topics which you are interested in. Your facilitator at the very beginning will summarize the basic ideas. So if you want to bring an example, please do it very quickly and in the context of the discussion. In other words, in a process of search for the common inter-RC action. Again, I would stress, this discussion aims towards identifying of the common actions between the RCs, which are of interest for you to and your colleagues to undertake. Now, could I please ask, Yoko, maybe we can slip to the second slide just for a moment. So in the afternoon, there are going to be a set of other 5 discussions. You can see on youth, better schools, ASD, e-learning, poverty and environment, and climate change. So you would be discussing with the facilitators which you see there in the rooms which are there. But I would like to ask help of Therese, please, to explain to us the system of moving around. You are not going to be moving around as much as yesterday, so you will be in one room, if you wouldn't like to, in the morning, and another room in the afternoon. So, well, but again, if you feel strong urge to pick on another discussion, no one bans you from doing that. Now, I will leave this at that, unless there are some very urgent questions about the essence of the discussion and expected outcomes. Hela. Yeah. I will repeat. The question is if you have any insights into the benefits of the joint actions among the RCEs. Is it for the sake of joint activities only, or is it some really important result which is being brought through these activities? Hela, may I just be sort of not sneaky, but well, I think it would be more convincing if some of the RCs which are already doing it would answer your question. Who are doing the joint actions or forming the joint actions? I know that Penang is doing it and some RCs in Europe. Graz is doing it, some others. Could I ask just 1 or 2 seconds reflections on this from you? So what are the benefits of these actions? Or actually, if you are not doing actions, why would you like to do that? So I have my opinion about that, but I think it would be more interesting to hear from the RCs. Hani, would you? We need to. May I just? Sorry.
I think cooperation is not only for the sake of cooperation, but I give you an example. As I said yesterday, if we think globally and act locally, in Egypt, if we are going, what we are trying to do now is to, let me say, to involve the Ministry of Education and the schools in ECD and implement certain actions, which is very, very difficult. I mean, the Ministry of Education is saying you cannot change the curriculum. You cannot touch it. So no way to change it. So what we are trying to do in Egypt is to develop teaching kits for ECD, which means complementary materials that should be distributed. For example, outdoor education, take the students to the Nile and take the students to the field, etc. We don't have this experience. We didn't do it before, and it's very difficult to find somebody in Egypt who has such an experience. But what we know is that some RCEs in Europe, for example, they have this experience. So what we are trying to do with them is to find the joint projects, which I presented yesterday with Graz, with Portugal, with Ireland, for example. Those are 3 RCEs we are trying to win from their knowledge. One in the field of energy for developing teaching kits for the students, and one in the field of water, and the other one in the field of environment or biodiversity. So these are type of actions that we would like to benefit from the other RCEs because we don't have this expertise in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's essentially, well, and this is what Lyle also is stating in a little note right here for me, for building capacity, inter-RCE capacities. This is one of the, among other many points. Well, if I can just very briefly answer from the point of view of sustainable consumption and production. So what we found is that the work across the RCEs would enable us to look at the supply chain of certain products and services which otherwise would be very not necessarily coming very naturally and organically if it is focused only on the local activities. And this is, for some of the countries, extremely, particularly wealthier ones, is extremely important, well, drawing inspiration from the Japanese experience in particular. Can I ask very briefly Clemens and also Zainal to comment? Just 1 minute.
Yeah, I can only support what Hani said, essentially. We have cooperations in e-learning with RCE Rennes, and it's just a combination of competences, emergence of competences, and an exchange of experiences. Yeah, that's it mainly.
Thank you. Zainal?
In our case on health, is a point that triggers an amount of another rooms of other issues of collaborations, like when from health we come to training on faculty training, and then the other one that we found very great is that the funding opportunity. Once you put like collaborations of a number of international RCEs inside, then we give a higher weightage to especially international organizations that we are asking for.
Mm-hmm. Well, essentially, it's very roughly the 3 or 4 areas which jointly come up. So expanding the perspective, capacity development, exchange of experiences, and funding opportunities, so among others. So could we just, again, come to the question, is the task for this morning and afternoon discussion is more or less clear, and your facilitators are, of course, very well briefed on what is expected. Though if you feel that the agenda is somewhat not corresponding to your needs, feel free to reshape it. So it's plenty of room to be flexible about that. But if we can just get some interesting idea about if collaboration is necessary, and towards what, and how. Yeah. Harold.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's possible, there have been lots and lots of discussions throughout the whole week on core competencies and assessment. And I'm wondering if it's possible to consider the creation of an additional thematic session for people that are really interested on those questions of core competencies and evaluation, since we'll all be leaving very shortly, and it might be a very helpful way to develop continued relationships on this issue.
Sure. Let me just very briefly ask all of you to... no, we can't do it on this program. The answer is yes, it's possible, as long as someone is taking a lead on this one. And what seems like happened in the course of this discussion during the WEEC workshops, as well as during these 3 days, is simultaneously several groups emerged as a way of preparation to WEEC, and core competences seems like is there among at least some of the bodies. At least UNUIS would like to work with this, Grand Rapids would like to work with that. There are a couple of other individuals in the RCs, other RCs would like to do it. But also don't forget that the 6 workshops which happened to be during your WEEC on urban challenges and on higher education, which also corresponds to the thematic discussion, thematic group already established, on schools and community, have a great potential to become, if I may use this word, institutionalized group. But then again, it depends how much activities are happening. So themes for the WEEC could already become the nodes, the seeds of the future thematic groups. It's a good opportunity to mention that Dimitri Podger actually came up with an idea, and she would like to shape it a little bit more carefully, of the thematic group which would deal with faith and ESD, which is extremely, extremely important. So the answer is, we have actually now, if it goes well, 10 plus topics. Whether they could be called thematic groups the coming years or months would come, because it's a matter of whether activities are happening or not. And we can institutionalize it if there is sufficient activity and leadership for those. Yeah, thank you. Very good. Could I ask Zainal Sanusi from RC Penang to take the first turn and brief us very quickly within 5 minutes on the results of your discussion and team?
Okay, we think we have like 4 or 5 RCs. We had an advantage of having some outlined, grounded discussions already based on the previous 2 sessions that we had in Barcelona and Penang. We come up with quite, hopefully, some concrete projects. If we can move to, hey, how can I get to the slide? Okay. Yeah, all right. This one forward? No. This one. This is forward. Okay. All right. So those are the lists. We got, yeah, you can see on that. All right. We identified, just to reiterate, that we got 3 challenges that we... I didn't press. It's move. I didn't do anything. Okay, all right, I hope it stops there. We identified there's obviously lack of educational material tool and kits, so-called. Another needs is obviously the training for all levels of health-related professions, and we agreed on this one. And also the third one that we find quite interesting is that to strategically approach to address preventions of major diseases, and this is much related to the current pandemic that we have. All right, these are some of the specific actions that we have come up with, and thank God, I think based on previous discussion in Barcelona, we are in the final stage of this application for training on ESD for health professions. Will be submitted to the Institute of Global Health. It will address a generic model, and then it will come to the detailed model. We're also thinking of development of toolkits for children on local health issues, meaning that something like the posters and the kind of awareness that we can give to children and also share with the parents on major issues, major health issues of the local context. The other project that we can come up with is we thought that all these have been reactive to all the kind of disease, flu. We've got birds, we got swine, and we don't know what is next. So we're thinking of somehow do a comprehensive research on how we can sustainably approach these kind of issues and relate to the health and ESD. The other one that we're thinking of is funding sources that we can come up with among combining all the names of different international RCEs. So then immediate actions that we're thinking of is that we will have this thematic website on health, which currently the result of the previous workshop that we have is already in RCE Penang. So the assignment is that to upgrade this website to the general thematic issues so that everyone in RCE who are interested in health can interact there directly. That's all.
Great job. Before I turn the floor to the next speaker, let me just make one small observation. Well, there is a great concern within our community. While we are going into discussion of thematic topic, we shouldn't really lose the sight of connection of this topic with the general theme of sustainable development and education for sustainable development. Particularly if projects like suggested just now on the thematic collaboration go ahead, well, website on thematic collaboration, the important issue would be to keep in mind the interrelation between the topic and the overall overarching umbrella. And let me just share with you some of the strategic considerations why the whole idea about working with themes came up. First, it was, of course, a suggestion from you. The suggestion came first time 3 years ago. It was more formalized 2 years ago. Ever since, we are attempting to facilitate this sort of interactions leading to concrete inter-RCE projects. We do think it's a very interesting opportunity to engage various organizations beyond those which are already working with ESD. We are calling it the second wave of mobilization. For example, when initiative on sustainable health and ESD comes up, what often happens in the RCs which are in principle interested in those areas, they need to go and engage organizations which are ultimately working with health or health and education. And it's not always so that these organizations are engaged from the start. So it helps us continuously bring people and organizations which were not part of the RC community in. So there are various very interesting aspects, but nevertheless it's important to keep the overall perspective and know that and remember that we are working within the education for sustainable development area. It is my great pleasure to invite now the team on biodiversity ecosystems and ESD to share the discussions in the team. Kiran? Biodiversity. I apologize. You admire the willingness to step in at whatever conditions. Sorry, please.
Hi, we started with the topics that were left from Barcelona. So there were many years RCs in our group. Wow, the letter is very small from here. So there was discussion of what were the kind of projects every RCE was working on. And so there is the Eco-Leader program from RCE Montreal. There's also websites from Canada Wildlife Federation. The multi-data Eco-Leader program also. I'm so sorry, just that I cannot read from here. Multilingual. Oh, I'm starting to see. Okay, Multi-Flat Eco-Leader from Incheon. So we discussed about the different projects, different RCs we're working on. And then we were discussing about the different things we could do together in preparation for COP10. In Nagoya, Japan. So there were different ideas that were raised up at different interests. So we were all interested in having side events in that forum. We were thinking about having a booth as well. We wanted to engage in a cyber dialogue with all the different RCs interested using a forum, an online forum. There was also the idea of having a film festival that could be oh, thank you so much. So we were thinking about having a film festival that will, and also a booklet that could showcase best practices and different cases. Lessons learned from different projects of all our RCEs. We thought about this not only as a film festival under the context of the COP10, but also a traveling festival that we could all make travel around the world. It was also discussed about the possibility of all RCEs joining the Green Wave campaign that has been launched by the CBD Secretariat. It consists about planting a tree all over the world on May 22 at 10 a.m. So with all the people involved, we could sort of create a wave with all the different time frames all around the world. So this activity in particular, the Green Wave campaign, will involve children. So different schools as well as other different type of organizations, NGOs that work with children could be involved in this activity. Also, we were discussing about the exchange of materials. There's a huge need of exchanging good practices, experiences, and what we all have already developed. And so for that, we got a very nice invitation from David, from the CBD Secretariat, of using the clearinghouse mechanism, the platform that they already have. So we will only need to create a working group who could give it a structure and that could define the different criteria that will be used for this repository of knowledge that we will be creating all. So the platform already exists, and it will be more about working together on how we want to use it. It has sort of wiki type of functionality. We also discussed about the importance of talking about the impact of food production on biodiversity. We discussed about two dimensions, the scientific dimension and the community one. So we thought about probably looking more deeply at the life cycle assessments that have been done on that, and particularly in regards to rice production. And everybody was concerned about having as well community-based assessment that could be made by communities themselves, and there's already some groups working in that direction. It was also at the very end of the discussion mentioned the possibility of having some representation of RCEs for two things: developing training for business leaders, and also one is having them involved, and as well as how we deal with them so they could reduce their footprint on biodiversity. So I think that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. It's very symbolic that Patricia from RC Montreal actually spoke on behalf of the biodiversity group. It's also very symbolic that Patricia is working very closely during this conference with REITA, because we know that in Montreal there is a secretariat of the Convention for Biological Diversity is located, and that the next location of the COP would be in Japan, around the RC, where REITA-san actually is working together with his colleagues. So the next speaker will be addressing the sustainable production and consumption area, and it appears to be me. So, okay, thank you. I'll operate it. So, as you can see, we were several representing RCs in North America, in Europe, in Africa, let's see, and in Asia. So we nicely were spread across the globe. We came up essentially with some proposals, and the
principle for suggesting those proposals was to start where your RCEs are already working or would like to work eventually, and where you would like engagement of other RCEs. And such approach was chosen very deliberately. You know, many of you know, and those of you who don't probably could guess or were informed before through various communications, that during the Barcelona conference, it's a wonderful list of projects was developed. And hands were raised that people would like to lead development of those project ideas. Very little follow-up have happened. So at the moment, we decided to be more strategic and build the project around those activities which are close to the hearts of the RCs and which are already going on. And this is the list we came up with. Now, the first project is about sharing productive capital. Initiators RC Saskatchewan. RC candidate Brighton to Oxford, Kano and Ryan Muse actually agreed to explore opportunity with their partners in their regions to see if their partners would be interested to join. And the whole idea is to create a depository of sort of tools and put together the website which would allow to manage distribution of various productive capital or productive tools which people are not using on the everyday basis. For example, you have a loan loan which you probably use once a month, and you put it in the database, making it accessible to your neighbors in the community. So that's first project. The second project was suggested by RC Ryan Muse, or by yours, which is exploring it in the context of the RC Ryan Muse. And RC candidate Brighton to Oxford and RC Saskatchewan are exploring possibilities for their partners to join this project. So the project is essentially focusing on the activities within the enterprises and beyond along the supply chain, making sure that the whole material and energy circle would be closed eventually. But the challenge is that many of the companies which would like to do it don't have sufficient knowledge on how to do it. So they are looking for engagement with the universities and other experts to see how to do it. So that's more or less at this stage research and strategy development projects. So again, all of these ideas are wide open to other RCEs to join. Please have it in mind. Third project was very interesting project suggested by Kano, RCE Kano. Ali spoke about the need for technology transfer for sustaining production of the food and other agricultural products. So the fluctuation of the prices on the market, particularly market of the poor people, is not so dramatic. So it's another project intellectually and in terms of fundraising which is open for initiatives of other RCEs. Now, from the side of RC Montreal, we received three proposals. One of them was actually suggestion to use guidelines for the museums on how to carry on sustainable practices. It's ready. We can make it accessible by advertising on our website or find some other way. The second proposal was invitation for various RCEs to join the training which is happening in September 2009, this year in Montreal, for the teachers on the topic of sustainable production and consumption. And the third very concrete idea was to open the doors for the school children to join the training process on sustainable consumption and production. And this project is in development. Yesterday, when we used the video conferencing facilities of the Biosphere, you saw actually how it's being done, so you know very well what we are talking about. The next project is a project suggested by RCE Chubu. RCE Chubu is looking for contribution in collaboration with the private sector. And you know, in the area of Chubu in Japan, it's a huge concentration of industries, including Toyota. So it's a big automotive industries. And whoever is interested in public-private partnerships with the companies would need to contact our Toyota man. right here among us. So RC Kana comes with a project, shared the idea of the project of wells to waste, where Ali was saying the waste separation and management facilities would be installed in the waste separation facilities would be installed in the communities, but the challenge was that infrastructure for processing this waste further wasn't just there. On the other hand, RC Tongyong said that, well, we have this infrastructure, but what we need to do is to work with mindset of people on how to create awareness which leads to the lifestyle changes in our people. So what we thought, it would be an interesting idea to collect all this array of challenges in the RCs and perhaps publish a nice special publication on of research, either using offer from Heloise, and I know that you already published a special issue, but we could as well probably do it, or find some other way to collect this wealth of challenges and creative solutions for them. And finally, what we said, the immediate steps would be the 3 suggested one here. Jos Herman said he will go and speak to the European Commission about possibilities for exploring the interest of the European Commission from the political and funding perspective to fund some of the activities in the area of sustainable production and consumption. It's a concrete commitment which would be implemented in 2-3 months. We thought that for sustaining communication, people can still try to use more systematically Basecamp and Ning and see if it would work this time. We thought that we could do quarterly email blanket, but people would not be chased by us. We would not ask you for contribution, but you would be regularly reminded to upload your stories and progress report on the Ning or Basecamp, whatever we decide, and then at certain indicated moment we would grab this material and publish a bulletin. And finally, there is an idea for exploring possibilities of writing and commenting on the policy paper for the RCs. That is it. And may I just with this invite Kiran to speak about higher education group activity.
Yes, thank you. Before I begin, I would request Hilary to come here because we worked in 3 groups and Clemens so that they can quickly join me to talk about their parts. As you can see, we had a huge list of people participating. It was the largest group, so we got the best room upstairs with a beautiful view. And about a third of these people had sent in notes on what they are doing already. And what we found was that most, so people were working, were interested in these topics, which were research, teacher education, e-learning, schools and youth. And then through discussion, we discovered that there were these additional sessions that people were interested in, which was sustainable universities, competencies, and resource materials. And then finally, it was the new ones that had been identified is what we finally worked on. And so what this is, okay. So the Sustainable Universities one, which was facilitated by Clemens, they had decided that they would involve students in RCs, include a gender approach, exchange programs, summer university, and shape together sustainability courses, which you will talk about. Or I'll just quickly go through it, and then you talk about yours. And the research and resource materials was facilitated by Jim, and which Hilary will tell, but a template for writing the resources was shared, and a background a philosophy of and educational orientations were explored. The competencies session was facilitated by Harold, Harold, and there was a Harold Glasser, and there was a very, very rich discussion on fundamental issues. So we really, got caught in that because we were talking about why should we be talking about this at all, or what are competencies, should we be calling them that? But we did agree on a joint discussion. While we are still at this very, very initial stage, we thought that one useful thing, because there was no project or activities that could be done around it in the sense of most other activities that are happening, we thought that what we could do was to further this thinking on an understanding of what competencies are, and for that we would create a monograph or a special journal issue which would carry a primer on discourses of core competencies and how they are framed, and there would be papers exploring how the discourses on core competencies are being applied to education and learning for sustainability, and then there would be responses to these papers, and then we thought that we would have two groups with different perspectives who would, and the two groups would write two separate papers which would synthesize all of the, what had been discussed. And now I request Clemens and Hilary to very quickly talk about what they did in their sessions.
So thank you very much. All right, it's here. In our group, we were about 8 to 10 people talking about sustainable universities, and first we were outlining, okay, the roles of universities they have. It's education, it's research, it's the management of universities, like waste management, procurement management, greening university programs, and so on, as well as outreach and social exchange with the environmental around the university. So we were thinking about how could we interact RCs within those 4 roles, and how can we implement sustainability in here, and what role can RCs play in those 4 fields. Then we came about to 4 real projects or actions we like to face in the future time. One was to involve more students into RCs, because students can be really a great resource. I think we don't take too much action about, care about it so far, and we could really involve them more into our RCE activities and also RCE meetings and so on. Then include the gender approach in all applications we do, in all activities we do. Gender is really an important issue to take respect on equal roles of men and women. We thought about an exchange program where we might involve also the international student organization ISEC, as they are very powerful worldwide. And they have already running a very good managed and well-managed, approved exchange program of students. And we had one case already between RC Graz and Greater Nairobi, where a student came to Austria via the exchange program of ISEC. And maybe we can find some agreements with the student organization where we can bring this on a broader basis within the RC network globally. Then we were talking about a summer university we might organize at RCE Cairo in the coming year on sustainability, and finally shape together sustainability courses. So to bring in our experiences, if anybody likes to organize or initiate a course at your university about any sustainability topic, to consult other people within the RCE network about those issues, and to exchange experiences then in that field. So that was just short and brief, and if you have any questions or also like to get involved in the one or other project, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Well, our group, we decided to combine resources, research and teacher education. There were 3 very large areas, and ultimately, by looking at resources, we actually came to the conclusion that we were managing to combine all the 3 quite successfully. We began by looking at existing resources, and in particular, 3 examples of monthly newsletters, along with the magazine that many of us have seen today that is very much Eloise's baby in this context, the ES, which is multifunctional. It has a lot of information, but it also has some excellent sections that can be used by teachers and by children in the classroom. Before we went any further, we felt as a team it was a good idea to discuss the philosophy underpinning new resources so that there's a shared message of what we're all trying to do. To accommodate this, we were very lucky in that Jim was able to share with us the model that is used by ShareNet. And we all agreed that this was actually something that many of us all over the world could accommodate very easily in the preparation of new materials. We specifically looked at the Hands for Change publications, which are exemplary. There are now 12 topics. And the most important thing here is that they start from the premise of storytelling. This gives ownership to the children, they tell the story, and this is further supported by an understanding of materials, of issues that are raised. Consequently, we came up with the following proposals. To begin with, the existing publications are going to be translated into Portuguese. A selection of those are going to be translated, which will give them a much wider field. And then it was also proposed that we develop new topics in this series that will facilitate the understanding of ES for children in urban settings. And this is something that a group of us are going to work on, but still very much keeping the existing model in the Hands publication. And finally, there's the hope that for those of us here today who actually work with students in an educational setting, that we could facilitate their experiences in school and bring those into the publication so that we're identifying topics for ESD and then transferring those, again producing more publications in this wonderful series. And that basically concluded our findings for the morning. Thank you.
Could I invite Zainal to take this time? Oh, it's not done? It's all.
It concludes the presentation from the morning session. Thank you, the facilitators, as well as all of you who contributed very much. Thank you. Karen, to speak on behalf of youth group, very appropriately so. Please, Karen.
Okay, we had about 13 people from different RCs, which aren't going to be listed up there. And we came to 3 major actions that we were going to take. The very first one is just to have every RCE develop a relationship and be affiliated with a youth group. So it could be a youth group that was created by the RCE or a youth group that's already in existence, but just somehow be affiliated with a youth group by next year. The second action that we're going to take is we discussed a lot about just a framework on how we're going to make our, there they are. A framework on how we're going to make our connection with youth. And what we decided in this framework is that we as adults, well, whatever. Should I change these? Okay. But we just decided that we as adults don't have the right to determine the future of youth, and that we should just facilitate them as RCs, facilitate these youth groups in determining their own future. We talked about being aware of the language that we use and how sometimes the language can be intimidating. So to use a language with youth that makes sense and that just gets the concepts across. We talked about it being action-oriented. Youth need to be in action, and they need to have an action in results for it to be meaningful, and the education will come within that action or after that action. We wanted to note that every RCE will do this differently. So culturally, youth will need different ways of being facilitated, but every RCE will have youth involved. And the last action that we wanted to take was to embed youth into the next RCE conference. So maybe to have a youth forum alongside the RCE conference with presentations from youth to see what the youth are doing in each RCE. And I guess a way to conclude this is we talked about the phrase ESD for the youth, by the youth, for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chuck, please, to speak on behalf of the group on better schools and ESD.
Thank you very much. The Better School Group is the one that grew out of the former teacher training. So this, in essence, was our first meeting as we came together. We were a large group, 25 or so, and we soon found out that we were really interested in a few different things. Some were people who were already in the formal education system, some elementary, some secondary, some tertiary. There was another group of people who were on the outside with resources and were looking for ways of partnering and moving in with schools. And then there were some who were more interested in either teacher education or even the philosophical approach as to what is a better school and what is education. So you can see the people who were engaged, and now we move over to the key questions. After quite a roaming discussion, we came up with 3 challenges or key questions, and they're very big questions. These are sort of the overarching ones. We have, I think it's 5 pages of notes that it led to it, but in essence of time, we will synthesize. The first one was, how do we engage schools in ESD? The second one, how can this new thematic group support other RCEs as well as ourselves? And the third one is, once again, one of these more profound ones about understanding and learning about significant systemic school change, that we are reasonable in bringing about lower level in the theoretical totem pole of bringing about change with groups and clubs within a school, but to bring about the kind of profound change as to what gets taught officially and who determines it and what kinds of buildings go up there, what gets valued, what gets evaluated, what gets reported was a larger systemic issue. So those were our 3 big ones that we want to work on, and then we came up with some actions and suggestions. One of the big ones was to bring, if we're going to bring about this larger level of change, was for the RCEs as an international movement to become engaged in bringing about policy change. It's, I mean, we need the early adopters because we don't want to bring in policy that's ridiculous. But as we do learn, and we see good practice and best practice in places, how can we build on that to bring about the kind of policy support that we need? And policy for the preparation of new teachers, policies around schools and buildings and so on. The second one is that we do have an awful lot of information, but how do we share the toolkits? And once again, we talked about the magazines, but we recognize that some countries have already a number of very, very good resources. In fact, some have even figured out ways of reducing down, like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. You know, if you Google climate change, you may drown just from everything that comes back. But there are ones where it's already orchestrated on the internet for grade level and so forth. We could go down about the next one was the need for positive celebration, the reinforcement, positive uplifting, and the stories and so on. But also inherent in that, and the very last one, is we recognized that we needed to learn how to explain ESD to senior policymakers and to our fellow teachers and fellow people in schools, to avoid the idea that we were just adding yet another adjectival education into an already overcrowded curriculum would be a mistake, and that most senior officials around the world really don't understand what it is. And so if we go to that end one about quality education and reorienting education, we identified that as a major one, because for schools, that is job one. That is the most important thing. How do we deliver a quality education? And of the four main thrusts of what ESD is, one of them is access and retention in quality education, and the second one is reorienting our existing education to prepare the students in our schools to inherit the world that we're going to give them. So those are some of the themes and the solutions and so on that we want to work on, and I apologize for skipping through it very, very briefly, but it's a strategy so that I won't be called upon to chair this again next year by doing a poor job. Thank you very, very much, people.
Thank you. Our group was looked at e-learning and ESD. We were a very small group, I think about 9 RCEs only, but we had a very robust discussion, so robust that we didn't get the time to prepare any PowerPoints. Anyway, we began by agreeing on a definition for e-learning, and we agreed that e-learning was essentially communications by electronic tools and digital equipment. Examples are video conference, internet, learning management systems, mostly Moodle. I think many people had experience using Moodle as an LMS, Wiki, etc. In all our discussions, we eventually agreed on a number of opportunities that e-learning provides us. The first one is that it offers the chance to deliver courses and programs, the more formal education, as well as other activities such as public lectures and activities for children. It also allows us to reach large numbers of people over long distances. It is highly engaging, and the learners have a very interactive experience. One gets more personal attention as a learner as well, using the e-learning. And simulations and animations of the practical components of teaching provide a much cheaper and safer means of learning. The RCEs then shared what they're doing in their own countries or regions and universities that they're attached to. And then we talked about challenges. Interestingly enough, the challenges, there were some challenges that were agreed upon across the board. There were others that were more specific to different RCEs. In the end, we did agree on a couple of challenges. And the first one was that the development of e-materials has some initial costs,
And depending on where you are, the cost could be quite significant. And as a group, we agreed that in the next 12 months, what we would want to do is to share the materials that RCEs already have so that we can actually benefit from what the others are doing. There may be some copyright issues with that, but we've agreed to work on that. Also, UNU IAS has kindly agreed to put web pages, page-based on thematic interests for us, the names of RCEs, contacts, and specific areas of projects of interest. That would, we hope that would start immediately. We also agreed that in learning, or rather in education for sustainable development, a better approach to just e-learning would be a more blended learning approach, allowing students as well as the community to have more hands-on experience. The other challenge we thought, which was once again probably more obvious in some RCEs than others, was that people in the more rural areas have limited IT access. And this is probably more significant in terms of the delivery of informal and non-formal education, but not necessarily limited to those. We acknowledged that there are some global initiatives in terms of reducing this digital divide by providing low-cost equipment. In this area, there is very little that RCEs themselves can actually do to address. The group finally agreed that we would keep in touch and continue to share our experiences and ideas and expertise, and to continue to work towards developing e-learning in our own RCEs in the area of sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. It's very symbolic that Angela is speaking on behalf of RCE Pacific, where e-learning and communication of a particular urgent importance. Could I ask Ali take the stand, please? And for you and Lyle, it's going to be a very tough challenge to make it even less than 5 minutes, please. We're really running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honestly, I don't think 5 minutes is too small for me. Honestly, in my group, environment, poverty and environment, we discuss, so it's like so vast and wide that we first ask ourselves, what is poverty? We got more than 30 different definitions. To solve poverty, it's working for more than 18 hours without being able to feed your family. To others, is living under $1 per day. To Africans, I think it's going to be 24 hours without food. It means trekking 5 kilometers without water. So the cornerstone of our discussion was, how can we enhance natural resources, at the same time reduce the level of poverty in the society? Or how do we use the environment without degrading it, at the same time increase the level of income of our societies, thereby reducing poverty? We came with a number of projects, and we asked ourselves then, what are we doing in that direction? The first respondent was Malaysia, RCE Malaysia, because they have a lot of bananas and the trunks are always wasted. They picked it off upon them. They used these banana trees and produced papers, and surprisingly 40 times stronger than the traditional papers they have in that country. RCE India was wonderful. They produce biogas, recycled bags and papers. They do eco guides and the rest. They generate money to the society and they use the environment to generate money. RCE Kano too, they produce biogas using 100% locally obtainable materials. And this idea is catching like wildfire in our societies. We use the baggage to recycle them and use them, and we reuse is an old tradition in Africa, but I think we're enhancing them, we are modifying them, and people are accepting them in Nigeria. There is also issue of ecotourism. People, like most people in Asia, they use ecotourism to promote the environment and then generate money for the societies. And in these areas, most of the RCEs that participated agreed to collaborate and work together. Then we have proposed projects that are not ongoing. RCE Saskatchewan proposed recreational education facilities or something like that. It has something to do with providing recreation facilities to the rural people that don't have the finances to come to the cities and enjoy the luxuries of recreation in the cities. And Bridget from RCE Montreal and RCE Saskatchewan, they agreed to work together, and she has seen a project somewhere that relates to that, and they are ready to collaborate. Then we have new concept. As I said, there are so many dimensions of poverty, and RCE candidate London was very dynamic. He brought up the idea of cultural poverty in relation to cultural understanding derived from adaptation from the environment. And that will help to foster coexistence and sustainable livelihood. Then so many RCEs agreed to partner with him, RCE Chebu, RCE Kobe, and RCE Fenang. RCE Fenang, they are working also on social equity, and it's a very vast something, and I cannot explain them. Then there is this issue of higher education curricula brought up by the London candidate, which will promote social cohesion and cultural diversity. The sewage and water management projects by the Brazil RCE, then we ask ourselves, how do we sustain this collaboration? How do we work together? How do we increase our network? Then how do we become stronger? We said some propose emails, some propose websites, then RCE Kobe proposed fair trade, that they are ready to promote fair trade, not only in the area of environment, but in all areas of the. Then students volunteer action, somebody proposed that in the universities that are members of RCE, we should be exchanging our students and learning from each other through that. Then there was this issue of barriers in communication. So we proposed non-verbal communication skills, proposed foster exchange, cultural exchange, fixtures, illustrations, and the rest. And I think that will bridge the gap. Then marketing technologies too, we have done that. And I think that is all about. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much, Ali. And may I just, I note that the group on poverty and environment and the next group on climate and ESD, actually very new additions to the whole RC communities. And thank you to Ali and Lyle and his team for bringing it to the community. Lyle.
We'll be done in 5 minutes. Keep the fries. Good evening, everyone. In this climate change group,
we had the participation of several RCEs from Saskatchewan, Montreal, Pune, KwaZulu-Natal, Tongjong, Western Jalisco, Shubu, Grand Rapids, Guwahati, as well as 3 IAS members. And interestingly, we found that there is some expertise, some experiences regarding climate change and educations, which goes from community awareness to education programs in climate change. Interestingly, it's remarkable, a joint research program with 10 global partners, which includes the Danish School of Education, the University of Sao Paulo, the University of London, University of Toronto, and others. And in the RCE community, there is in progress a research inventory of action plans. So I let my colleague Lyle.
Thank you, Miguel. We promised 5 minutes. We have 2.5 minutes left, so Nada will do it. We knew that we would be at the end and time would run very quickly. We have the slide up there. We had 20 plus people that were there with the diversity that Miguel said and tried to capture. You can't capture it all, but we did in their own handwriting. 12 pages of it for the UNU. Miguel, can you come up for a second? Okay. I would like to officially hand off with the whole world, and we know that Craig, Saskatchewan is watching on the World Web, so that if you lose this, you're in trouble. There are all the details of the great ideas and the work that came out of the people this afternoon. Too many to share. We couldn't even capture it in one slide. We did it in 3 slides, but what is in that, you will see on the website we've been promised, that shows the essence of climate change that went from technical to educational to a whole variety that we've heard about. But the passion and the people that were there and the commitment that they made is all captured in their own handwriting. I thank those 20 plus participants for sharing that, and the connection between what has happened in the past and going towards Copenhagen, for an example, is just the beginning. There is a real active movement by those people on behalf of all of us here to move this forward in the connection of climate change and ESD. Thank you.
And I follow Lyle's saying, thank you all of the panelists for this session, as well as all of you who work really hard in contributing with your discussion. And we do know that you shared ideas and opinions and wishes of your RC stakeholders as well. So with this, we are closing this session. Thank you very much.
I just want to tell you what a privilege it was for us at the Biosphere to welcome you all. And what a privilege it was for me to work with NAMI's team, with Mr. Natori-san, with all of you in the recent day. It was even more interesting since I met NAMI in Montreal in February and now working with her team all the week in Montreal. I really, really enjoyed it. And I hope to go back to Japan for the 3rd time, and I will have many other friends to meet then. We're going very quick because buses are waiting for us to go to the optional visit. You know which visit you're taking. There is one for the Science Center, for the Biodome, and the 3rd one for the Tohu. I really hope you enjoyed the rest of your stay in Montreal. And please feel free anytime just to call me, to write me an email if you need anything. We'll stay in touch. Thank you very, very much.
She said, me, go fast, so that's why I will talk in French. Okay. On dit toujours que les meilleurs discours sont les plus courts.
We're always being told that the best speeches are the short ones, so I will be brief. Mr. Natori, dear friends, chers amis et collègues, when the members of the CRE from Montreal started organizing the 4th conference for UNU-USASI, we had 2 goals in mind. First of all, we wanted to discover and have others discover what we're all about. And we discovered extraordinary things during the last months, especially during the 3 last days. First, we discovered that our members of the Montreal RCE are able to work together and reach common goals. The partners of our organization have united their efforts and their resources to make this event a real success. And this bodes well for the other projects led by the Montreal RC. Thanks, Jean Langlais. Thanks to all the Biosphere Theme once again for its warm welcome in this magnificent site at the heart of this majestic St. Lawrence River. Thank you very much, Madame Drapeau, who was able to live up to the challenge. She coordinated this 4th conference and also respected the budgets and the schedule. Congratulations. Thank you, Therese. I would like to thank the City of Montreal, especially Mr. D'Souza, as well as Daniel Lucier's team. They worked very hard and cooperated to this event. I would like to thank the university's member of my organization, UCI Environment. I would like to thank all the presenters, the volunteer staff who made sure that the event went smoothly. Without this volunteer staff, there would be no event at all. We've also discovered that we can count on friends to help us along to make this event a real success. And these people are highly competent and very dynamic. I'm referring to our friends from the Canadian CRs, Regina, Sudbury, and Toronto.
Cindy, Catherine, Suzanne, and don't forget Chuck Upskin himself. Who don't know Chuck? I think nobody. Good. Every member of the RCE Montreal appreciate your great work, and be sure that we will be present when it will be time for you. Please call us. Nous avons découvert aussi des gens.
We've also discovered that there are some specialists, people who are really committed to the RCE World Network. Mr. Natori's team told us and showed us what we can do and what we can do at every step of the way.
Zenaida, Nami, and all of you. You are really the heart of the networking. Et enfin, nous vous avons découvert, vous.
And finally, we've discovered you, all of you, the staff of the existing RCEs. We now know what each of you does for the development of its respective organization and for the RCE network. We are people who are passionate, committed to your work, open, transparent. Congratulations for the work you have accomplished, and thank you for your active commitment and your participation to this conference. The other goal we shared is also to have the participants discover new things. All of the participants now understand what is going on in other RCEs. During the 3 last days, we were able to learn to know each other, to try to understand what we could do, what the future approaches could be. I'm sure there will be more cooperation in the future. And finally, we wanted to have you discover Montreal, a nice city where you can come back often. And during the last week, the meetings held at the Palais des Congrès as well as at the Biosphere showed us that Montreal has priorities, that it is sustainable development and the environment. And finally, I hope that you enjoyed your stay in Montreal and that you will take advantage of the next few hours to discover our city.
Have fun and come back often in Montreal. Thank you for your attention. Au revoir et à la prochaine.
Goodbye and see you next time.
Thank you very much. This time I don't prepare any written text, so maybe it's very informal. But first of all, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for your hard work to make this conference a great success. It is a good opportunity for us, Global RC Service Center, to hear directly challenges or obstacles you are facing, and also good practices you are carrying out. We heard several expectations and homeworks for us, RC Service Center. Maybe many of you are curious to know the venue of the next International RC Conference. And I'm pleased to inform you that we Global RC Service Center received a kind offer from RC Curitiba Paraná. And so far, we haven't received any other offer, so maybe most probably next venue will be Curitiba in Brazil. And thank you, Ziola. I will send my staff to Curitiba next month, and after that, final decision will be taken. I would like to thank once again host of this international conference, RC Montreal, for their warm hospitality, hard work, and providing this wonderful venue, especially Mr. Jean Langlais, thank you very much, Andre Teres from Environment Canada, Biosphere, and Serge from ICI Environment. I would also like to thank facilitators of the all sessions who can, with their efforts, we can realize such a dynamic meeting. I would also like to thank interpreters to make this bilingual conference possible. Before closing, please allow me to say that I am very proud of our team members. Zinaida, Yoko, Nami, Sampriti, Aurea, Arima, Miguel, and Mana. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce my colleague, Mr. Takagi. He joined UNU-IS April this year. Mr. Takagi, please stand up. From now on, Mr. Takagi and I will jointly lead our team. And with our team members' hard work and with your colleagues' continued variable inputs and cooperation, we like to further strengthen this RC community. In closing, please enjoy optional visit after this, and also please enjoy your remaining stay in Montreal. Have a safe trip back to your country, and see you again, most probably in Curitiba next year. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Natori-san. Merci beaucoup, Serge. Merci beaucoup à tous. Et salutations aux gens qui nous écoutent en webcasting. Goodbye for people who are watching us on webcasting. Have a beautiful trip. Goodbye.